Hi, I'm Debbie Georgatos. Welcome to my show, America, Can We Talk? Today we're going to be talking with Congressman Chip Roy about the detention centers and health care. I'm going to give a little update after that on asylum, detention, and deportation, the White House's new immigration plan, and score 1 for Trump, 0 for the squad. And last, I'll tell you why these stories matter to you. Stay tuned.
Debbie Georgatos, host of America Can We Talk, is an author, attorney, and political analyst whose mission is to inspire the American political conversation about preserving liberty in the best country on earth. America Can We Talk is sponsored by GC Works, a Dallas-based company performing advanced technology research in the oil and gas industry.
And welcome again to America Can We Talk. We have a great guest joining us today. I'm going to go right to that interview. We have Congressman Chip Roy joining us on phone, and he has been on the show, I think, years ago, back when we were at another network, but he is now a congressman from Texas, CD21. He is a stellar, outspoken, articulate conservative, just a real hero to the conservatives around America. By way of quick background, He's worked for a variety of the stellar leaders in the Republican Party. He's worked for Senator Cornyn on the Judiciary Committee. He has been a former prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Texas. He worked with Governor Perry, Texas Governor Perry, as Director of Office of Federal Relations and also on his presidential campaign. He's worked for Ted Cruz. He was Ted Cruz's chief of staff when he was elected to the Senate. He's in Texas, so well known, working for Ken Paxton, our Attorney General, and he now is himself a member of Congress from the great state of Texas, CD21. And I think we have Chip online. Hello, sir.
Debbie, how are you? Thanks for having me on. Great to be back on your show.
Very happy to have you. And I must tell you, I mentioned before we came on, enjoying watching your career, if nowhere else on Facebook. You just do. I learned so much about what you're doing in Washington. So appreciate that. All of your ability to be outspoken and take on the tough issues, and you're just great. Well, I want to start with, actually, I saw today there was a hearing. This relates to border security, but there was a hearing involving the DHS chief McAleen, and you made some great comments that you were kind of, in your questioning of him, kind of just pointing out that the danger at the border is not really, or the America's southern border is not ICE, as the left seems to claim, but actually the danger at the border comes from the cartels. Can you just address that briefly?
Yeah, Debbie, glad to. Look, the hard left of the Democratic Party, which has taken over leadership. I don't think Nancy Pelosi is really the speaker anymore. We've got the four speakers, as I call them, who are calling all the shots, and they seem to want to vilify ICE, our law enforcement community that stand on the line, keeping us safe, finding criminals and figuring out how to deport them, but also running detention facilities while we figure out how to process those who come here illegally. They want to make them the enemy. They're not the enemy. The enemy is the cartels, who are operationally controlling our border, who are using people for profit by moving them across the border. And we talked about it in the hearing today, and the acting secretary confirmed what we've known, which is that they get upwards of $10,000 moving somebody across the border, depending on who it is. And they do it all for profit. And this is a important issue that we talked about today, where we have to recognize that ICE is doing its job despite Democrats' failure to give them the resources necessary. They don't have the bed space. They don't have the facilities to move people to and detain them. And they're restricted from being able to detain families together under the flawed so-called Flores settlement and extension of that by a court. And as a result, we can't do anything but catch families and then release them. As a result, children become the golden ticket to come into our country. It's not even about asylum as much as it is about using this child as a ticket to get in, that is then causing us to be overrun, fill our system, not have facilities, and it's stoking the flames of the crisis. We can address it, as I said in the hearing. It'd be a one-page simple solution to fix it. The Democrats in the House refused to do it, despite the fact Obama supported it, despite the fact Obama supported funding ICE. These Democrats refuse to do it because they're using children for crass, cynical purposes.
That was a great summary. I want to mention to our listeners, we're speaking with Congressman Chip Roy. He has several pieces up at the Federalist. One is called "ICE Isn't the Enemy. The Drug Cartels Weaponizing the U.S. Border Are." Everything we'll talk about today, the stories we'll talk about, you can track down the exact stories on my website, americacanwetalk.org. On the homepage, go to shows, go down a list of links, and you'll find a link to this article. But I want to turn the attention, if we can, our attention to the detention centers. Many on the American left, including the squad, the 4 freshman Democrats, have claimed that the detention centers, places where holding people who entered America illegally and were still in the process of determining whether or not they have a right to stay here, that those detention facilities should be really considered something like concentration camps. And they are just ugly pictures described, ugly scenes allegedly happening inside the detention centers. And I know you visited one in Colorado last week. In fact, I think it was the same one where some protesters actually took down the U.S. flag and put up the Mexican flag. And then they also defamed or defaced a Blue Lives Matter type American flag. But you went inside, you both visited the center, you saw what the facility was like. So can you describe for our listeners from your firsthand walkthrough last week what the detention center really looks like inside in Colorado?
Sure. And to be clear, this is an ICE detention facility, which is a little bit different than the Border Patrol detention facilities, which were created as a side note under Obama temporarily, right? Or not temporarily, they were putting up quickly to be able to deal with the surge of the unaccompanied children that were coming in 2014. They put them together. They put the chain link fences in place to separate out children from adults to keep people safe, created their air conditioned, all those things. We continue to maintain them that way. They're not meant for long-term housing. What we need to do is process them within about 48 hours, get them out, and then get them to an ICE detention facility where you then can process them and have immigration judge make adjudication and then decide if they have some asylum claim or they need to be deported. I went to this ICE facility in just outside of Denver in Aurora after this flag incident where they raised the Mexican flag, put down the American flag, defaced it with abolish ICE, turned it upside down and re-raised it. This is the kind of people we're dealing with. I went into the facility to check it out, to see what all the complaints were about. There are 1,200 people in this facility. 80% of them are from the surge across the border. 59 countries represented. These are people who are being paid for by taxpayer dollars, being detained, and they have televisions, video games, iPads where they can read news in their home countries. They have doctors, medicine, a dentist in the place, ping pong tables, 3 square meals, clean facilities, bunk beds. They were in there. They were playing in a gym, shooting hoops, watching television, playing games. This was a safe, secure, and clean facility. I would suspect that the average American taxpayer would be very frustrated that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars to have such detention facilities to house those who continue to flout our laws, and that the very laws that Democrats refuse to crack down on and make sure that we have a secure border. That's what we're dealing with.
Thank you for that description. And thank you also for just being so outspoken. And you write these great pieces so people can actually read about your time visiting that ICE facility and what you saw. And it really is, it's a disgrace that we have to have arguments made to ignorant American people that somehow we Americans in our facilities are treating people the way that some on the left claim we are. I want to turn, though, to healthcare, because this is an area in which you've been an extraordinary leader in Washington. You know, it seemed like the Republicans we campaigned a lot on getting rid of Obamacare, trying to end it, trying to do different things. But we really have the healthcare system in America is a little bit of a mess. It is the kind of hangover of Obamacare, which has been gutted in part, but still hangs around and strangles insurance companies and strangles individuals. So you've come up with a proposal called Healthcare Freedom Accounts. And again, for our listeners, you can go and read this article if you go to our website, americacanwetalk.org, homepage on shows, go down, list of links, and you'll find this article, which is by Congressman Chip Roy. Americans don't need socialized medicine, they need healthcare freedom. Can you just give us kind of the rough parameters of your idea to deal with the healthcare situation in America?
Sure, Debbie, of course, that's a long conversation, but let's start with the short and the basics. We're all frustrated with Obamacare, but we're not frustrated with Obamacare just because of it as a political issue. We're frustrated with high prices for health care, too many regulations, and more importantly, too many government bureaucrats and insurance bureaucrats between us and our doctors. We have limited options. We have too many networks to go through. We have these high deductibles. We get stuck by having an employer-provided health care plan that you then have to figure out how to change jobs and how to change insurance. And all of that is unnecessary. We need to free up the system. We need to get prices down. We need to get it to where you have a doctor. You can go directly to your direct primary care provider. Picture the old doctor with a black bag coming to your house or picking up your cell phone and saying, hey, I've got some congestion. Can you work out an antibiotic? All right, we'll come in real quick or I'll swing by. You want that kind of a relationship with your doctor instead of this distant kind of third-party relationship where you have to call some 25-year-old kid in Omaha, Nebraska who's looking at a sheet of paper that some insurance company put in front of him with some schedule and say, well, that'll be $400. Here's your MRI. That'll be $3,000. Wait, what are you talking about? So we free that up. What do? We create what we call a health freedom account, which is essentially a health savings account on steroids. It is a relatively uncapped, very large ability to save money, ability to transfer dollars from one person to another. You can help somebody, transfer dollars to an heir, contribute to the account relatively unlimitedly with tax break, and more importantly, your employer can provide money to your health freedom account in a way that would be tax advantaged the same way they do when they provide you your insurance plan. The idea here is to break free from employer-provided insurance, allow employers to keep doing it. Let's be clear. But we want to change the model so they're able to provide insurance funding, tax advantage to them, tax advantage to you, and you get to be able to go out in the market, get an insurance plan, and then keep it. It eliminates the pre-existing problem in the cradle, right? It stops it from the beginning because you're not having to have a situation where you're moving from one employer to the next in a world in which we sometimes have 10, 11, 15 jobs. So you can have your insurance just like you do your homeowners, just like you do your automobile, and be able to carry that from one to the next. Then we've got other things that we're talking about to get drug prices down. We want to make sure there's a safety net that is improved and enforced so that it'd be better. And there's a lot of other conversations we can have. But the idea behind the Health Freedom Account is to free it up, get prices down, and get you back to your doctor.
Chip, one thing I meant to mention introducing you, again, we're speaking with Congressman Chip Roy, and one other point I meant to mention in introducing you was you formerly were with the Texas Public Policy Foundation, one of the most stellar state-based think tanks that comes up with policy ideas all the time. And I knew you'd be stellar in Washington because you think along those terms. You think in terms of how to make what policy will actually address the problem, and especially in this era with the Democrat presidential candidates, pretty much all, to one degree or another, committed to Medicare for all, which is another way of saying socialized medicine. Government takes over the whole system. I love the idea that you are putting ideas out there for the American people to consider and understand so that we have some alternative to what the left seems to be trying to push us toward, which is essentially government-controlled health care or socialized medicine. So I love that you did this. Are you at the point in this idea where it's just an idea, or have you moved forward in a bill yet?
No, we have dropped legislation that is serving as the vehicle for the discussion point. Obviously, we can amend it, change it, tweak it, and get ideas, but we have a bill. And it does exactly what I just described. We plan on introducing additional legislation to continue to supplement it. But the idea, again, direct primary care, health sharing ministries, ways for us to get back to caring for each other, going to your doctor directly, not having to go to insurance bureaucrats to tell you how you get your health care. They're just as bad as government bureaucrats. Let's be honest. I want to get back to insurance that insurance is supposed to be, right? You wreck your car, you call them, you go, I got a wrecked car, I need to fix it, right? You want to have the same thing in healthcare, but you really want to use that as more of a last resort. You don't have to go to insurance for your healthcare any more than you want to go to your car insurance to go put gas in your car or fix a flat tire. You want to be able to manage that, afford it, and the way to do that is get prices down, increase options, increase competition, and have all the choices you want to have in a 21st century world. We want the Uberization of healthcare, right? We want the iPhone of healthcare. We don't want to friggin' go backwards and go back to these monolithic big insurance companies who tell you how to have your healthcare.
Okay, I'm going to steal that line, the Uberization of healthcare. I love that. That's so clever. Okay. Congressman Chip Roy, we could have spent an hour talking just about the border situation and what you saw and the proposals and how the left is conducting themselves in Congress and the battle ongoing to deal with actually funding what is needed at our border to make our border secure and to deal with this influx of refugees or people who want to become who are seeking asylum. But we agreed to a quick interview, so I'm going to let you go. But let me just tell you, I love talking with you. Thank you so much for making time to join us today.
Happy to come on anytime, Debbie. Seriously, you're doing great. Keep spreading the gospel, both the gospel that for our Heavenly Father, but also the gospel of freedom. So keep it up.
Amen to that. Congressman Roy, thank you so much for joining me.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, folks, that is one of the heroes of Washington. If you follow conservative policies of any kind and you wonder what is happening in Washington, and now you know, of course, that he is a member of the U.S. House, so the Democrats have the majority. He is fighting up, going upstream, fighting upstream, always working to try to bring conservative solutions. He is a substantive, brilliant guy. I actually know him years ago, and he's at Texas Public Policy Foundation. And at some point, he was on the show talking about some policy they were looking at that time. But he is one of the real heroes of the U.S. House. New is his first term, and I will tell you that his seat is one of the primary ones targeted by the American left. The idea that a bright, articulate, policy-oriented, hardworking, clear-spoken, plain-spoken, clear-thinking, when he cross-examines witnesses, when he's in the hearings in the House. I mean, I was watching it today on Facebook thinking, man, I wouldn't want to get sideways with him because he's so smart about things. He's just wonderful. So he does have a primary challenger, and the Democrats are pouring out of all the U.S. House seats in the state of Texas. Congressman Chip Roy's is one of the primary ones the Democrats are looking at to try to take away because they look at first-year members of Congress as a little more vulnerable. They hope they are, and they've got a very radical leftist they've identified as the person that the Democrats are going to put up to challenge Congressman Roy. So if you are interested in supporting somebody, I don't work for him, I don't get any money out of this, but I'm telling you, he would be a great congressman for you to follow and support Congressman Chip Roy. And again, so grateful he could join us today. Well, we did things a little bit out of order in the show today, so I'm going to quick do my first five, even though we're past the first five time. But I wanted to let him on because I knew he had a tight schedule. I wanted to, in the first five today, talk about what happened in the Congress yesterday in the U.S. House, where there is someone from Texas, of all things, a Congressman Al Green, who raised an argument. He raised on the floor of the House, he wanted to have a call for the impeachment of President Trump. Let me just backtrack and say, the Democrats thought when President Trump, fair and square, won the election in 2016, they thought somehow they could remove him simply by having him be, somehow the Electoral College be challenged, a vote being challenged, the argument that Hillary Clinton allegedly won the popular vote, even though she lost the Electoral College vote. Then they thought they for sure were going to get him because they could prove that he had somehow colluded with the Russians, and the whole Trump-Russia collusion hoax thing came up, and then we had Robert Mueller look into it, come up with his report. Basically, there was no collusion. The summary of after 2.5 years of millions and millions of dollars and hundreds of people involved in the effort to try to get President Trump, that fell flat on its face. Then they thought, well, they couldn't get him for this collusion, but maybe for obstruction. And the Democrats realize that has now fallen on its face. So now the Democrats' mission, this is ever since President Trump won the election, all that's really happening in Washington on the Democrat side. It is not trying to solve America's problems. It's not trying to address the situation at the border. It's not trying to bring safety and security to the people who are flooding over the southern border. It is to get President Trump. Latest effort was this bill effort by a Democrat Congressman Al Green from Texas. He launched his third impeachment bid against President Trump. And so in the U.S. House, that bill with a majority of Democrats could not get that impeachment bill through, or impeachment even started. 137 Democrats voted with the Republicans the precise vote was to table the bill. So they voted yes to table the bill, meaning get that impeachment garbage off the floor of the House. So, Speaker Pelosi ended up with a little more egg on her face, although it's pretty hard for her these days, but she cannot contain the progressive wing of the radical leftist wing of the otherwise progressive Democrat Party. Al Green pushed his motion on the floor. Even the Democrats couldn't stomach it. And I'll tell you one other thing in closing on this first five about this. it's not just that it happened that the Democrats, when they have the majority in the House, could not get the impeachment bill moved forward. It's actually bigger than that. The Democrats are figuring out, the elected Democrats in Washington, that there's absolutely no reason to be trying to impeach President Trump. This is what they're figuring out, that this whole effort that started as soon as President Trump won, that we're going to impeach him, we're going to stop him from getting sworn in, we're going to remove him. The Democrats, especially from relatively conservative districts, are realizing they are not going to go along with impeaching this president, especially when there's nothing to impeach him on. And this is what is sinking in to more and more Democrats in the U.S. House. And it is giving Speaker Pelosi a very, very hard time, because she still thought, I mean, as we moved along, she's been careful about impeachment. She said we have to build up to it. We have to be sure we're ready. We have to make sure we have all our ducks in a row, and keeps trying to push it off. But she's discovering that the radical wing of the Democrat Party, which has basically taken control of the Democrat Party, the radical wing of the Democrat Party just can't wait to get rid of him, and they have nothing to stand on. So Nancy Pelosi, egg on face, closing the first five for today, discovered again that she can't even get the Democrats to vote for impeachment of President Trump. She had the Democrats, a significant number of Democrats, vote with Republicans to say, make this bill go away, please. I want to turn now on something. This is kind of related to our interview we had with Congressman Chip Roy earlier today, who, again, just a stellar member of Congress. But I want to turn to where we are, and I was calling this segment kind of the ADD segment. You know, we have asylum, detention, and deportation. When President Trump ran for the presidency, when he was candidate Trump, he focused on the border. He called national attention to the situation at the southern border. Now, to be clear, President Obama, in his 8 years in the White House, spent a lot of time luring people up from Central America in one way or another, luring them to come forward, sending the signal that in America we're about to give amnesty to all these DACA people, we're about to give amnesty to other people. The message to Central America was, just get up here quickly enough and somehow you'll get to stay. You'll get to stay in America. So the southern border was in crisis. Even in 2014, President Obama was calling it a crisis, although his answer to the crisis was send money, give them food, let them all come in, somehow make them citizens. It was a crisis engendered by his conduct. And then he intended to have Congress then feed these people, house them, clothe them, bring them into America, and have them on a zip line to becoming citizens. He assumed all this would happen when Hillary Clinton would, in his plan, win the 2016 presidential election. Well, as we all know, Hillary lost. President Trump came along. During his campaign, one of the primary issues he ran on was securing the southern border and the larger issue of having our immigration policies and our refugee policies comport with the best interests of America. That was his point, and Americans rallied around that. Told the story many times on the show. I have a friend here in Dallas who is she's a third-generation American. Her grandparents came from Mexico. She grew up, so she's Hispanic. She grew up right along the southern border on a ranch, and she's Republican, and she is of Mexican descent. And she told me, in fact, she said on the show one time, I had her on several years ago, that the moment she saw President Trump, candidate Trump, come down that escalator at Trump Tower and make his announcement, the announcement that so many people tried to just pounce on and say it was racist, that he made reference to the kind of people crossing the southern border, she said, I grew up on the southern border. He's exactly right. That's exactly what's happening at the southern border. These people crossing the border, they're full of people who are dangerous criminals crossing our southern border. They cross over the ranches along the southern border. So this whole idea that the left tried to say, well, Trump was a racist because he wanted to close the border, this is an ongoing effort of the left. And the reason that President Trump won his campaign, in large part, was reasserting the idea that our border security, our refugee policy, our immigration policies should all be centered around the idea of keeping America secure. America first, keeping American citizens secure. So this is kind of an update in the three areas where we just have this battle ongoing. I nicknamed it ADD, was Asylum, Deportation, and Detention Centers. As a quick aside, I want to mention that in Nancy Pelosi's effort to try to contain the progressive left, she had to surrender a few weeks ago. I think it was June 27th, so Thursday, June 27th, the House finally voted yes on a bill that had come back to them from the Senate, which gave President Trump a significant chunk of money he'd been asking for that was to help along the southern border, to help people along the border patrol, the border facilities, help them have enough people working there, have enough of their equipment they need, the facilities they need. It was a $4.6 billion Senate bill to send emergency funding to the border. And so this was a Nancy Pelosi thing. She had, the Speaker of the House had previously said, we're not going to fund President Trump's efforts. We're not doing one thing. We're not going to help. And she really got kind of shamed and embarrassed into it. And so she went along, and the House went along and supported giving that money to the president to help secure the southern border. Progressive. And I mean, Nancy Pelosi says she's progressive. The radical leftists that run the party now, which are the freshman squad, the foursome, and people like them, were outraged that Nancy Pelosi even gave President Trump that funding. They would starve the border patrol, starve the needs of America at the border in order to get their way, get their mission, which is essentially to abandon the southern border entirely. So where we are on the border issues, I want to mention first on asylum. To be really clear what asylum is, and I've been over this before, but it's so important to understand. Asylum is an ancient concept. Asylum has been discussed in world history as far back as the ancient Greeks had this idea that if you are a truly oppressed person, if you live in a country where you're truly oppressed, you're in danger from the government, that if you try to go to another country, the country receiving you will look at your situation, assess and decide whether or not you really have a credible fear of persecution. And if you do, they'll find some basis to allow you to stay. And so in America and truly throughout the world, the concept of asylum is if you're seeking asylum in America, if you enter America illegally, you're seeking asylum. Asylum has the same standards as applies to refugees. And refugees are people who stay in their home country or stay in some other refugee center outside of America, make application to come to America, and are granted the refugee status, and they come here. Asylum is exactly the same standards, except people make it inside our border, and then, so the only difference is the asylees or potential asylees, people seeking asylum, are in our border. The standard for asylum is you have to show you have a credible fear of persecution due to race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. The point is, you don't have a right to asylum, to break into America and say, I'd like to stay, I want asylum, if your complaint is that there aren't enough jobs in your country, or that your home country is poor, or that you have poor living conditions in your home country. Asylum is a long-standing international concept that the world understood. In fact, the European Court of Justice just had a ruling again along these lines. One of the points of asylum is if you're really leaving the country where you fear persecution, you must seek asylum in the first safe country you get to. It is fundamental, Law School 101. Part of the asylum idea is if you're the one fleeing your country and trying to go somewhere else to safety, the first safe country you come to must be the place you seek asylum. So President Trump is trying to put in place here in America tighter asylum standards at the southern border. He is trying to put into America's system under this rule that was published online Monday of this week, trying to put basically that idea of that with limited exceptions, migrants who are passing through another country must seek asylum in that safe country. So people coming to America from the Central American countries cross through Mexico. They'd have to seek asylum in Mexico. And this is really just, I want to make it clear, President Trump didn't just come up with this idea, out of clear blue. It's been standard issue asylum under policy for literally thousands of years. And so this is a new rule published by the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security. It was published and took effect on Tuesday. Naturally, the ACLU and other left-wing they say they're pro-immigration. They're actually just anti-border. They're anti-America. They're anti-idea of having an America that exists as a sovereign nation as we know it. So they want to eliminate border security, eliminate the relevance of borders, which ultimately eliminates the sovereignty of America. So those groups, ACLU, other ones, are in court today as we speak in San Francisco, arguing that this new law, this new rule that President Trump had published by the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security violates some other federal law, and they're trying to get it struck down by a judge. And so the battle goes on. But to be really clear on asylum, just because someone comes here and says my home country is poor and I can't find a job, they do not qualify for asylum. America literally cannot take in every person in this world who is seeking asylum. On a similar note on asylum, the United States Senate, the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee came up with a new idea called Operation Safe Return. And they've got bipartisan support for this. And this, again, on asylum idea, the basic idea is people get here, we guarantee you make application, you lay out your credible fear of persecution, the standard in law. If you don't have that credible fear of persecution, if you don't meet America's standards, 15 days, turn around, go home. It's called Operation Safe Return. The Senate is getting in on the idea we have to begin applying reasonable, long-standing asylum ideas. And then my ADD, asylum, and then detention and deportation. I just want to remind you again, the detention facilities, how dishonest the American left has been, particularly the squad, particularly Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, claiming these horrific conditions. These are conditions that she just generates out. And others have too claimed that these people seeking asylum aren't allowed to hug each other, and that they're held in solitary confinement, and that they're in horrific conditions. A bunch of garbage intended to sway the ignorant and uninformed in this country. I'm glad we had Congressman Chip Roy on with us earlier today talking about the idea. He toured an ICE detention facility, nicer than a lot of homes people have in this country. These people have basketball court, they got ping pong tables, they have iPads available if they want to check on the news, 3 square meals a day, a dentist on a dental facility, a health facility on site. We're not torturing these people. We are trying to have order at the border. Last point on this is that President Trump actually began the process, as we all been talking about, of deportation. To be really clear about deportation, the only people President Trump and the federal government are trying to deport from America are people who've already exhausted all legal remedies, have already made their argument for asylum or whatever other status they were seeking, have no legal right to be here, and once they got their final deportation order from a legitimate judge and court in this country, chose instead to go into hiding instead of to leave as they were told to do in the deportation order. Those are the people that President Trump is removing. And I found a poll. I actually found it kind of disappointing. There was a poll about deportation, and it said that 51% of voters, 51% of voters, support the sweeping raids by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. They support the raids of deporting these people who have no legal right to be here. Folks, that should be 99%. Now, I'm telling you, if it's 51%, we're barely over half that can't even get to the notion if you don't have a legal right to be here, you have to be helped to go home. You have to be forced to go home. I actually suspect that's a misleading poll. I think even more people than just 51%. In fact, they only got 35% of people who said they firmly oppose these efforts. And so you still have, 65% didn't firmly oppose. But on the ADD front, I think President Trump is taking the steps that are consistent with policies he ran on, consistent with the argument he made at the time he was running to be president. We have to reassert the importance of America and our borders and our immigration policy and our refugee policy. We have to make them matter for America. And another topic I wanted to hit today, this is all kind of related to border stuff, but there's a vital topic I wanted to hit. The White House has announced they've expected to roll out merit-based immigration proposal this week, what's happened, President Trump mentioned he wanted to have immigration reform. And he mentioned immigration should be more merit-based. The idea of our immigration system, who we let come here and people put them on a path to citizenship, should be based on who we think will best help our economy and best help our country and our culture. So President Trump has this idea has taken shape some. Senior advisor Jared Kushner, who's obviously President Trump's son-in-law, but he's also a senior advisor, unveiled parts of a proposal to high-ranking cabinet members on Tuesday. The gist of this proposal, this immigration reform, is merit-based immigration. Number one, it would end the visa lottery. Number two, make the process to declare asylum more competitive, meaning you have to actually have, to be really clear, people crossing the southern border these days and seeking asylum, and you've heard reports from the Border Patrol saying this. They come with a piece of paper in their hand. They have language they read that is parroting the language in our asylum law. Obviously, they've been coached. Someone's told them what to say. It's people saying the same exact language over and over and over and over and over and over and over. They've been coached. This is not legitimate people seeking asylum because of a credible fear of persecution. It's people who want to take advantage of our asylum laws. So back to Trump's immigration thing, end the visa lottery, make the process for asylum more difficult, eliminating chain migration, the idea that you have that it should count in your effort to become an American, that you happen to have relatives here, because the chain migration thing was a ploy that was used by the American left years ago when we changed our immigration laws, and we put the idea into our immigration laws that once you're here, you have like a chain back to everybody in your extended family, whatever country you're from. You can bring them all, pull them all in under your immigration status. And this is one of the things that President Trump has spoken against. Many Americans do not like this idea, because the ultimate impact of it was, as we had more and more low-skilled workers entering America and getting on the path of citizenship, and they bring more people along with them, we weren't taking into account, are the people coming here able to actively participate in our economy? Are they able to add value to our economy? Are they just going to be taking away jobs that Americans should be doing? We weren't weighing in the equation in any way in the chain migration thing. What specific things do we need in our economy? What kinds of people doing this? What merit-based is. There also is within this new proposal by President Trump that's apparently going to be released, I guess, probably next week. But there's going to be a nationwide e-verify system, essentially saying that, we have to have some way of employers having a clear idea of who they're hiring, and if they understand, they need a way to check easily. I think the e-verify, it exists, but it has not been followed. So actually, and there's also, I guess, Mitch McConnell has weighed in, the Senate Majority Leader has weighed in to say the bill, to get Democrat support, is going to have something about DACA, something about the Dreamers. I don't know if President Trump's going to go for that, but at least there is energy coming out of the White House, not just imposing new restrictions on the border, not just trying to get the border under control, but trying to set America's immigration system back to a system that is tied to and relevant to preserving America and America's sovereignty. And this is a brilliant idea to have this now, because most of what the American left, when they talk about comprehensive immigration reform, which is always their term, and it sounds like, oh, that's good, you're going to fix a lot of problems. Comprehensive immigration reform for the American left means broadly letting more and more people in, having fewer restrictions, more people coming here legally, fewer rules about and as to the merit of their ability to work in our economy. It means the American left's effort at comprehensive immigration reform is again part of the long effort we're all watching, which is the effort of the American left to bring more and more people into this country, to move them quickly towards citizenship, because the left sees them as a new, future, permanent Democrat majority voting base. This is what the Democrats always have in mind. Always, always, always. And so the last story I want to get to today, just kind of briefly, this is a kind of follow-up of the big story that we all were talking about earlier in the week, related to President Trump sending out a series of tweets addressed to the squad. People could keep calling it the squad or the Mean Girls squad, people all sorts of funny names. But the gist of it is these 4 extremely left-wing Democrat members of the U.S. Congress have been just relentlessly attacking, criticizing, mocking President Trump, calling everything he does racist, everything that he possibly ever does that may in any way that they can twist and contort into being characterized as racist. You know, President Trump sent out these tweets and basically said, if you hate America so much, because they just, especially, this is Ilhan Omar, who is a Muslim Democrat black member of Congress from Minnesota, Rashida Tlaib, who is a Muslim, and she's actually of Palestinian descent, but she's a Muslim American Democrat from Michigan. And then you had the Ayanna Pressley, African-American radical leftist from Massachusetts, first-year Democrat member of Congress, and finally Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who everyone in the whole country knows. She probably has better name recognition than the Vice President of the United States. But in any case, those 4, the squad, always attacking Trump. And even more importantly to this discussion, always, always, always trashing America. All 4 of them, on the mission day and night to trash America, to portray America as a deeply racist country, a deeply xenophobic country, a hateful country full of bigots, where we have, too much poverty, and we have a horrible healthcare system, and we are cruel if we dare enforce our borders. They attack so many elements of American society, and honestly, so many Americans are sick of them saying these things. So President Trump finally put these tweets out saying, you know what, you don't like it here, go home. Especially speaking to Ilhan Omar, who's been especially harsh and just directly, just with acidity. I can't even think of it. It was a strong enough word. Just visceral hatred for America in so many things she says. So Trump put these tweets out. Everybody explodes about this. And so, they had they were playing the victim. After these 4 spend day and night attacking America, mocking America, attacking President Trump, they're all of a sudden the victim. They're outraged. They can't believe he had the nerve to tell them, if you really hate America so much, go somewhere else. Actually, what I was going to say is how President Trump handled this. It was the most amazing, interesting thing. There were Democrats, members of the U.S. House, Democrats, in an off-the-record, off-air conversation with Jake Tapper of CNN, who said to Jake Tapper that Trump won this round. They're pointing out that this foursome that I just mentioned, there's these 4 left-wing, radical, anti-American, they're all supporters of the Green New Deal, which is pretty much the communist takeover of America. 2 of them are openly members of the Democrat Socialists of America. Maybe all 4 of them, at least 2 of them are. And so they're openly socialists. They hate freedom. They hate free markets. They hate the liberty upon which America is founded. And so these 4 people, by President Trump calling them out, describing how bad it is what they do, and he really ended up making it impossible for Nancy Pelosi and the alleged mainstream of the Democrat Party in Washington, which, to be very clear, is radically left. Nancy Pelosi herself says, I'm not a socialist, I'm just a progressive, and kind of like 6 of one, half dozen of the others. Seriously, not much difference. The point of all this is the Democrat members of Congress said to Jake Tapper, Trump won, because what Trump succeeded in doing was forcing Nancy Pelosi to defend these 4 radical America haters. Nancy Pelosi was trying to tiptoe backwards and not really affiliated with them. I don't know what's wrong with those 4. They're not really, we're mainstream Democrats, I swear. But when Trump attacked them and they came to the House and they demanded defense, they demanded that, Trump be denounced, Trump has made those 4 radical, socialist, leftist Democrats, he's made them the face of the Democrat Party. And that is what the Democrat congressmen were complaining about, talking to Jake Tapper. They're saying, dang, he won this because we can't really distance ourselves from them because we had to defend them because Trump criticized them so harshly. And I want to throw one other point in before I turn to why it matters to you. I talk about politics on this show, but it's really I often even say I dislike the idea of politics exactly. I don't like the mean-spirited politics, name-calling junk. I do this show to speak up for the extraordinary, unique greatness of America, to try to lay out the arguments on dozens or hundreds of issues of how the fabric of America's culture of liberty is at stake in this country right now because of how radical the American left has become. And it's important for people who love America, important for patriots, for conservatives to recognize we can't just look at little issue here, resolve, surrender to the left, or don't surrender to the left. This issue. We have to see what the left is up to in the big and dynamic picture, which is this radicalism of the American left. It is infecting our culture. It is impacting our culture. It is hurting people. And one specific quick story was, you probably saw that story of some 69-year-old guy who ended up, he attacked. He was throwing incendiary devices toward a detention center. He got violent. The police ended up shooting him and killing him. But the point of telling you about this guy, this was an ICE detention facility where he was outside and is acting, in a bizarre and dangerous manner. Is when you look at what the guy had to say, he was actually ignorant enough, dense enough, uninformed enough to think that what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her, quartet of America haters say about the detention facilities was true. He's that ignorant, and it led him to lose his life. These people on the left, we can't just act like this is politics as usual. They say one thing, we say other things. These people are infecting and invading America's culture. They are shaping people who are too ignorant to understand what's true, people who are vulnerable, people who have been conditioned by the left to think that maybe America really is kind of racist and really is a terrible place and really is all these bad things left always says. And it actually took shape in this guy losing his life because he engaged in violent behavior, which the police end up having to shoot him to stop him. What the left is doing to this country, folks, is very, very serious. It is not just, yay, we won, Pelosi had to back down this impeachment effort for this time, or yay, we won because we got Pelosi to go along and have the Democrats sign to send some badly needed money to ensure that the border is more securely protected. Those are tiny victories, but the bigger victory must be in the battle of ideas in our whole culture, and the bigger victory can only come from people like you and me speaking up in everyday life about the extraordinary, unique greatness of America. And now I want to turn to the ending of the show I do every single week, which is to share with you why the stories we talked about on today's show matter to you, starting with Nancy Pelosi and the impeachment flop, listening to the hysterical frenzy of the squad, the mainstream media, social media. You might believe that the radical anti-American left is increasingly popular. That is a lie. It is an illusion. Don't fall for it. The House impeachment resolution was voted down by 137 Democrats. They know it's baseless. This accusation of Trump is a racist. They know their constituents wouldn't support them. The radical left does not even have close to majority support, even with Democrats. But their ideas are dangerous. They must be exposed and ejected. You can take heart and keep talking. Asylum, detention, and deportation. Asylum, Trump's proposal, first country available. This reduces the burden on America. This is not radical. This is fundamental and very common requirement. Detention, concentration camp characterization is false, grotesque, evil smear, already will cost the life of one mesmerized, that 69-year-old guy, member of Antifa. Third, deportation. Americans support the deportation of illegal immigrants who've been through our judicial system and received a final deportation order. Trump administration patriots are reasserting control of the grown-ups. Americans are right with him. On the White House's new immigration plan, why it matters. Immigration policy can and it should be simple. We take care of American citizens first, and then we welcome immigrants who want to be Americans, to assimilate into the land of the free. who obey the law, who have promise of becoming productive, contributing citizens. An immigration plan focused on merit is exactly what the vast majority of Americans support. And finally, Trump and the squad beating out the Democrat Party this time. I have to smile at the idea that the Democrats are admitting that, Trump won on this one. But Trump is forcing the Dems into an important choice: rationalize, justify, and embrace the radical left and its anti-American hatred, or reject the radical left and get back on the American playing field. I don't know if the Democrats can do that, but I hope so. It's an important choice for the Democrats, and it's a really important choice for America. And that, my friends, is America Can We Talk for today. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Come back every Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. Central Time, because right here on America Can We Talk, I always talk truth about America, because America matters. Talk to you next time.
America Can We Talk? Truth about America.
Can you